Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Rent Prep for Landlords. This is episode number 205 or 205, 205, whatever you want to say. How do you do it?
205.
205. I don't know why that makes sense because it makes sense for every number, like 208, 207, 201. 201, I don't know.
O is not even a real number. So,
yeah.
Yeah. Just sounds right, though.
Yeah. We're really, getting into the details today here.
Yeah.
But we do have a good episode lined up for you guys. We got some really interesting in the news stories that we're going to be covering all over the United States here. But why don't we roll some of that sweet intro music?
Welcome to the Rent Prep for Landlords podcast. And now your hosts, Stephen White and Eric Worrell.
All right, Steve. Let's just jump right into the in the news segments.
Let's do it. Pretty exciting. We got a landlord win in this one. We've got some good stuff.
Yeah. The first article that I found here, this came from therealdeal.com. So it's a real deal. It's a big deal, this website. But this was by Will Parker and Conrad Putzer. And this was posted on April 26th of this year, just a few days ago. This is actually about the agent that luxury rental landlords cannot live without. So her name is Sunan Zhu. So she is originally from China, and she's actually helping these really high-end Manhattan high-rises, all right? So they're having a lot of trouble filling these high-rises because they're high-end luxury high-rises.
Okay.
And she is a leasing agent who is helping them fill them with college students. So she has brought about 100 college students to the Brookfield Property Partners Tower, capitalizing on a network of wealthy Chinese teenagers and 20-somethings that she started building 3 years ago. So this is kind of crazy. She's doing this all just from her phone, essentially. And it says that she has brokered more than 1,000 leases for students at Manhattan's tallest and most expensive rental buildings, including the, I don't know if I'm saying this right, what do you think? Moynihan Group Sky Extell Developments. So pretty crazy. These kids that are coming from China, their parents are giving them a $50,000 monthly allowance.
What?
Yeah. So the $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 that they're forking over for these luxury apartments is nothing because they're getting $50,000. I thought that was pretty crazy.
That is super crazy. So here's the real question. What kind of screening? Like, these are college students. So because they're wealthy, do we assume that they don't cause trouble?
I mean, I guess if you got a high-rise luxury, apartment building, maybe you don't care. It's kind of like when you send like a kid to a college and you're a donor or something like that. They're not going to be like, wait a minute, is your kid smart? They're going to say, no, that kid's dad donated $1 million last year.
Right. But what about the other tenants in the building that are like, hey, what's with all these kids and crazy parties or whatever, assuming that comes along with it, but maybe not.
Well, this says that they reckon that about 80% of the market rate residents at the building are from China. So in the story, they're talking about how the one gentleman, he gestured toward a backpack sporting college student as he crossed the lobby of the far west side property. And he says he has $1 million in cash in his apartment.
That's a dumb thing to say as somebody's walking through.
Oh, and that tenant has $1 million and that one stores it in their sock drawer. Right. Don't ask me how I know.
Right. That's crazy.
Yeah, but I just thought this was pretty interesting in a couple ways, kind of talking about how the influx of renters coming in from another country and how you might be thinking about filling your rental apartment and sometimes you don't think of these weird avenues. So this person has found her niche in being a leasing agent, building out a network with really high-end renters from China.
It's pretty impressive. I mean, it's a great way to fill. Obviously they were looking to fill those vacancies and they had plenty of them, so this worked out well for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't we move on to our next story? So this one comes courtesy of the Wall Street Journal, and this one is the win you were talking about for landlords.
Landlords score a victory in appeals court. This is pretty exciting news for landlords. It may not be relevant to you necessarily, but I think just exciting in the sense that it's a win in the landlord column, which you don't see very often in court. And so, maybe the winds are shifting a little bit. Who knows?
So as I mentioned, this came from Wall Street Journal by Josh Barbanel, and this was from April 28th. This was posted, and I'll just read the first few paragraphs here. It says, in a rare victory for landlords, the New York Court of Appeals has ruled they acted properly in pushing up rents when they converted thousands of regulated apartments to market rate units. So basically they're taking, market regulated units, so rent controlled units is what I take away from that. And making them just market rate units. The unanimous decision last
on
week.
a turnover, though.
Yeah, on a turnover.
Yeah, they're not just doing this with the people still living there. This is the apartment turns over.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's time to raise it to market rents. I don't think that was even questionable. I feel like that's the way it should be, right?
Yeah. Well, it says here, if we read a little bit further, unanimous decision last week overturned an appellate court ruling that challenged the process landlords and state regulators had followed for many years in deregulating apartments with high rents. The law allows the deregulation of vacant, regulated apartments when rents exceed a threshold. For many years, that was $2,000 a month, but it is currently $2,733 a month. So I don't know if that's the rent controlled price, but it kind of gives you an idea of how crazy the rents are there.
Right.
But the lower court had said that landlords should use the final rent paid by the previous tenant to calculate the rent of regulated units. But landlords instead typically added about 20%, the amount allowed after a vacancy and the cost of renovations to the rent. So landlords had actually been increasing the rents by 20% when there's a vacancy. This went to the appeals court in New York City, and they actually won. They approved it. They said it's fine. Some of the article kind of goes on and kind of talks about how this could create a sweeping problem for New York City residents because all of a sudden you're going to see a lot of these rent-controlled units going up in cost by 20% or more.
Right. Well, stay in the place you got if it's rent controlled. I guess that's the best advice.
Yeah. Of course, there's going to be other suits being filed here, and there's a lot more to kind of shake out during this. But yeah, one of the rare wins that you'd see when it comes to the news for landlords, because I searched these local news stories in the news stories, and I put in the keyword landlord, and it's not usually friendly.
No, it's not. And, this might not be the popular, on this podcast, it might be popular to say, but otherwise may not. But, we live in a free market. It's crazy to think that there's landlords out there that are sitting on a property, can make more money in that property fairly, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not gouging or doing anything crazy or outrageous or illegal. But they're being controlled and told that they can't. So let's just say that you're running really, really tight margins on that property. It's got to be tough to swallow that pill and be like, well, I guess we just have to deal with keeping the rent the same. It's not going to go up, or we're not going to be able to change it because of rent control. So yeah, I'd say this is a huge win for landlords for sure.
Yeah, I mean, off the top of your head, is there what kind of businesses can you think of that where you open a business and the government's going to come in and say, no, this is how much you can charge for your product?
It usually only happens in huge companies, right? Utilities or, these giant monopolies out there that the government has to step in. But
or an oligopoly, whatever that is. I don't remember that from 10th grade.
Yeah,
do you?
No. So
it was just a fun word.
Yeah. But I definitely see this as a place where Big Brother's stepping in where we don't want them to. Mm-hmm. So it's good. And the good news for landlords out there is, New York and California are usually the birthplace of regulation where something comes out first and then it ends up being adopted across the country. So maybe this is something that will eventually spread.
Yeah, hopefully. So why don't we get to the next news segment here? This comes courtesy of CBSNews.com. And this was written by Jeff Glore and was published on April 30th. This is really recent news, Steve. I actually saw this on Reddit at first.
It's disappointing, first off.
It was for tenants and landlords.
Yeah. And I, not that I claim to have some, incredible knowledge of insurance or the insurance industry, but I do kind of have a basic understanding of how they operate. And this just proves the point that for the insurance companies, the name of the game is to hold on to as much money as you can for as long as you possibly can.
Yep.
And that's how their rating is affected, basically by how much money they have at any one period of time. And so, these insurance companies balance a pretty fine line between, are they insurance companies meant to help people and pay out claims, or are they a bank that's trying to collect on interest that they're just keeping into accounts?
So the title of this story is that a federal program meant to help flood victims spends millions fighting claims. So this highlights the story of two residents, Richard and Linda Brown, who have a shell of a home. So they live in Louisiana, and they were destroyed by the floodwaters in 2016. At the time, they didn't panic because they had a flood insurance policy worth $168,000. To date, so we're talking 2 years later, they have received less than half of that at around $62,000. So they said that we pay into this premium, and all I want is it to just be fair, and we weren't getting fair. So 2 years later, they're living in a house that's still exposed down to the studs. And they got a picture of them sitting in front of these studs with wires, and I mean, it's just sad. So the article goes on to say that there's been numerous cases where FEMA, and I want to make sure I'm saying this right, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but the Browns decided to fight the National Flood Insurance Program, NFIP, in court. Established 50 years ago to help flood victims, the NFIP is run by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, so yes, FEMA, and responsible for all flood policies in the United States. Insurance premiums and taxpayer dollars fund the program to the tune of about $3 billion a year. So got all this money coming in from taxes, and you have these homeowners that are paying into this policy as well, that are having trouble collecting on it. And then this one's just heartbreaking. It said that a 2016 government report found little oversight of flood litigation spending by FEMA. One flood case was estimated to cost $87,000 in legal fees just for trial preparation. That homeowner's policy limit was $25,000.
That's such a bad decision. We're going to spend $90,000 fighting a $25,000 policy.
Yeah. And it's a policy that somebody paid for.
Yeah.
You know, this isn't just like some handout. This is something that somebody paid for when they have, you know, these tragedies hit. And this is definitely one of those stories that's just like, there's like 4 or 5 layers of just disgusting.
Yeah.
Because you're like the homeowner who's just like living in filth and like no walls in their house because they're waiting on money coming for these insurance.
Yeah.
The $3 billion from taxpayers.
Yeah.
The fact that FEMA is the one that's supposed to be running this.
Yeah.
and they're actively like making it hard for people to collect on their claims.
I can't even imagine the frustration, you know, whether you're the homeowner, you're a landlord, you're trying to deal with this, you're trying to fix it, get it right. You did everything right. You had everything in place the way you were supposed to. And then it's just not working. It's just not going the way that you want it to.
Yeah.
Horribly frustrating, I would imagine.
I wonder how much of this has to do with the fact that there has been so many large storms in Louisiana and Hurricane Sandy. And
that's what I was thinking. $3 billion sounds like a lot. It's not in the grand scheme of things. Maybe they're reaching their limit or trying to manage that. But if that was the case, would they be spending $90,000 to fight a $25,000 claim? That's terrible mismanagement right there.
Yeah. I mean, that's just, you and I have talked about this before too. The larger the company, the more, issues that you can see like that where people just don't care because it's not their money kind of thing.
I would venture to say that I don't know the numbers, but wouldn't it be crazy if you added up all the legal fees and found out that the legal fees in every case surpassed the amount of the claim and they would have been better off just paying the claim?
Yeah.
Like what a nightmare for everyone, including taxpayers. Crazy.
Yeah, and I'm kind of skimming through this article, but it's saying that they hired, Gerald Nielsen's Louisiana law firm was hired to fight the Browns' claim. For more than 30 years, Nielsen has been the go-to lawyer for insurance companies fighting against flood victims. There's a heck of a thing to put on your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, I'm an advocate against flood
What is
victims.
it you say you do? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it says,
fight these dirty, no good flood victims all day. Oh, it's exhausting.
What's your guess on how much FEMA has paid this firm?
Oh my God. Don't tell me it's over $1 million.
$29 million.
Oh my God. That's insanity.
So yeah, again, you think about $3 billion sounds like a lot. They've literally, if my math is correct, have spent 1% on that just in legal fees to their own legal team to fight people trying to get paid out on these floods. Yeah. It's tough. I mean, I can't imagine if a landlord, especially like Houston area or Louisiana or something like that, you've got like 40 rental properties or something like that, and you've got to make claims on 5 of them.
Yeah. And
you're fighting this in court in multiple different properties.
Right.
Oh, gosh. I don't know. It's terrible.
Yeah. If any listeners have a story to share, wins or losses, if you dealt with flood insurance, had a great experience, they paid out, I'd like to hear that too, because I'd like to know how often that happens. Because it seems like we only hear the horror stories too. So, but if you have a story to share, Eric at Rent Prep?
Yeah. ERIC at rentprep.com.
Yeah, let's hear them.
All right. So the final in the news story, this one comes from the WashingtonCityPaper.com. And Andrew, you know what? They're killing me in these last names. Giambrone. Is that what you think?
Yeah, Giambrone.
Well, why don't we just call him Jabroni?
Jabroni.
Andrew Jabroni on April 26th wrote about a notorious landlord, Sanford Capital, agrees to exit Washington, D.C. So I thought this story was pretty interesting because more than 2 years after the district first sued the D.C.-based landlord, Sanford Capital, over the deplorable housing conditions of some of its properties, D.C. Attorney General Carl Racine has brokered an agreement with a company that requires Sanford to divest all ownership in residential properties in the city. Have you ever heard anything like this?
Never.
It's just basically like, you're awful, get out.
Yeah. And you have to give up all your properties and split them up, divest the ownership and basically get rid of these properties.
Mm-hmm.
It does seem kind of crazy. I'm interested what they did. Like, what are they known for? Just basic slumlording, or is there anything crazy that stood out to you on this story?
Yeah. I mean, there wasn't anything in particular that stood out in the story, just the fact that, this is happening, that somebody's just being told you can no longer have rental properties in the city. So I'll read a little bit more. It said the agreement, which a DC Superior Court judge still must sign to make it official, stipulates that Sanford is taking all practical steps to leave the DC market within 6 months and cannot re-enter the district for the next 7 years. So if you want to steal on some really crappy rental properties in DC, now would probably be the time to reach out to Sanford Capital, because they've only got 6 months to unload those properties. So if Sanford, its affiliates, and principal Carter Noel are unable to divest their holdings in the 6-month period due to circumstances outside of their control, they must hand over the management of the remaining properties to Novo Management, a third party that the district and Sanford have mutually designated for the purpose, according to a copy of the agreement. Yeah.
I'd like to be Novo. Right place, right time there.
Yeah.
So it says in the agreement, it's a new era for tenants. When landlords won't take the basic steps to make sure that their tenants live in safety and dignity in accordance with the law, we will work to move those bad actors out of the market and allow other owners who respect the law and respect their tenants to take their place. I think what's shocking about this is usually you're crushed with penalties and fees and litigation and regulation before you ever hear about them saying, like, get out.
Yeah. At the bottom here, it did say that, let's see. It says that tenants at some of the company's properties organized with help of tenant advocates to draw attention to the poor living conditions and to press the district for legal action. For example, the tenants at Terrace Manor won $325,000 in rent restitution from Sanford last year, as well as the right to return to the site after W.C. Smith completes needed renovations.
Wow.
So yeah, this has been a kind of an ongoing situation.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting too how they just banned them for 7 years. Just, hey, you can't do business here for 7 years.
Banished. Shame.
I think sometimes we kind of lean towards the landlord property manager, but you kind of get the feeling on this one, for the city to take that drastic of a...
Sure. I always say, one bad apple ruins the bunch. That's the reason why a lot of landlords carry that stigma around with them or have that bad name, or people just automatically associate, landlords are greedy and horrible people. As you and I know, they're not, but you end up having a couple bad apples like this that ruin it for the rest of the landlords that are doing things right or doing things by the book or genuinely care about people and making sure they've got a habitable place to live. So in the grand scheme of things, I would say this is probably a good thing for landlords. You want to get those bad actors out. You want to point a spotlight on them and say, don't do this. And hopefully it deters others from doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Although it won't.
Yeah. Yeah. Money and greed, that's usually the first thing that people are going to use to make these decisions. So.
Yes, for sure.
And every landlord is just greedy.
Yeah.
Heard that a few times. So next segment here, this is one we call Landlord Hotline. You can actually call yourself. The number is 716-218-0363. Mm-hmm. If you're driving, make sure you call right now while you're driving. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. But that number again is 716-218-0363. It'll go to a recorded voicemail line where you can leave a message. Just tell us about something you're dealing with, landlord or tenants. And sometimes we do get tenants that call the hotline as well. So
yeah,
got a pretty interesting one for you here, Steve. I hope you enjoyed it. I know you haven't heard it yet, so
let's hear it.
What I'm recording is that I'm being evicted because this is an illegal unit since 1999. I was moved in and I had papers signed by her, which at $2,100 was makeable, but she had, this is a 3-bedroom house and 1 bath, a single family unit. She divided the back of the house with more than 6 units in front too. The reason that I'm evicted is because she's been illegal for 1999. The 1999, she never had told me this reason what's going on, and now she's forcing me to move because the inspector comes, and every time the inspector comes, they make her retake every little eviction space, and then she rebuilds it back after the inspector stopped coming around.
All right, I'm going to pause it there.
Uh,
This is not a one of the characters that we've created. This is a real voicemail from a tenant.
I just want to say, landlords out there, God bless you. I feel for you.
Yeah.
I know what, God, I know. I've had so many of these conversations, whether the guy's got a point or not. Oh my God.
He doesn't articulate it very well.
No, and I still can't even pick up what he's saying. Is he saying that?
I've listened to this a few times. What I get out of it is that he lives in a 3-bedroom apartment.
Okay.
And the landlord is doing things to make it so that the occupancy standards might be getting, stretched a little bit.
Okay.
So they're turning it into like a 6-bedroom unit somehow. And I think that's what he meant by she's taking things down after they do the inspection or putting them back up. And the fact that there's these inspections going on, I'm kind of getting the idea that it's Section 8 possibly.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's obviously certain rules and regulations with Section 8. And I mean, this is the story I'm telling myself from listening to this a few times. I know this is the first time you're hearing it, but I'm guessing that, that somebody is putting up like temporary walls or something.
Yeah. And the timing's bad because I just read one of the blog comments that we got that I know that I kind of shared with you a little bit about the house being haunted, and this landlord that went on this crazy rant about the house being haunted and the landlord hasn't done anything about it and she's dealing with ghosts and all kinds of stuff. And again, I'm not downplaying the potential severity of the situation that this guy's dealing with.
It's tough because you know what? It's like this landlord might be doing something dubious, but
the landlord may also not be doing anything wrong, and it's a misunderstanding on the tenant's part. How many times have we seen that?
I think when you do hear a tenant say, I'm getting evicted and this is why my landlord's wrong, you do kind of get that little bit of the BS radar that kind of goes off.
100%. I couldn't tell you how many conversations I've had with somebody that the conversations start with, I'm getting evicted and it wasn't my fault. And then as they go in and tell the story, I can usually pick out within the first minute the real story behind the story.
Mm-hmm.
What's really happening, and why they're really getting evicted. The landlord's not cool with me pulling my motorcycle into the living room.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
You know what? I had a friend in elementary school. His dad owned a junkyard, and he'd have motorcycles in his living room. He had these what are they? The Indian motorcycles?
Old Indian. If it's your house, God bless you. Go ahead and do it. If it's not your house.
I thought that was the funniest thing, though.
Yeah.
He's a pretty gnarly dude.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read some of this here because you mentioned that blog post that you shared with me. This is actually a comment that somebody left on our blog at rentprep.com. The title says, "My house is hunted." I think they meant haunted. "And I'm suffering from depression and anxiety and sleepless nights. Please help me." So I don't know if this is going to be too painful to read. This might be something people want to see, but we're going to give it our best shot here.
I just want to point out it's probably 30 lines and it's one sentence. There's no periods. So there's no punctuation.
All right, I will read it. What's that character on Saturday Night Live who can't control the volume of his voice? This is like Ron Burgundy where he reads what's on the teleprompter. So we're just going to read it like it's a teleprompter, and I'm Ron Burgundy. So please help me. I'm currently standing in a haunted house. We constantly experience paranormal activity. My kids are terrified. I'm terrified. I'm constantly stressed and depressed and having anxiety attacks. I was not informed that this house was haunted until we start experiencing the activity. I was not informed by the landlord at all about this house. I start asking questions around the neighborhood, and they informed me this house is haunted, which we knew because we experienced more and more activity. We see things, hear things. My children are terrified. I have many sleepless nights. So I decided to ask the landlord what happened in this house. He replied, "Oh, you're not scared of ghouls," which informed me that he knew exactly what was going on in this house. Apparently, the guy's very afraid of ghouls. But I think he meant ghosts there. Or what is going on in this house. 4 months before he moved us, there was a shooting in this house where the woman had killed her boyfriend. Not only that, before that happened, there had been other things that had happened in this house, and it's not right. I'm suffering from depression and anxiety. I've prayed, burned sage. It has helped. My kids are terrified. They told me and ran to me in a panic, expressing to me that they are seeing ghosts. Please, if you can help me and my family, thank you. So, Steve, when you get a blog post comment about this, how do you spring into action to help this person?
What can we do as a screening company to help this person is my first reaction. There's nothing I can do.
Well, they've already burned sage, and it
how
has
about
not
this?
helped, so
how about this? Ghosts don't exist, and you're fine. And I would imagine that if you stop feeding into the anxiety of the fact that there's ghosts there, your kids would probably not even.
Do you really believe that ghosts don't exist?
I really believe that ghosts don't exist.
I don't know if I do. I'm always back and forth on it because I've got a few credible friends that have told some stories, and I'm like, I don't think they're yanking my chain.
No, ghosts don't exist. And I believe that it's an overactive imagination, if anything. And if there is something going on, there has to be an explanation. Now, the one piece out of this that I'll dig out and say, okay, maybe there was an issue here. If there was a murder in the house, and they asked, they would have a right to know that. But the landlord doesn't have an obligation to tell them that ahead of time if they're not asking those questions and asking, has there ever been a murder in this house?
Mhm.
So I don't think that the landlord's necessarily done anything wrong. I mean, if you're the tenant in this situation and you really truly feel that way, your reality, what you believe becomes your reality. So I'm sure for her, it is haunted. And in that case, maybe the only option is for her to move to a safe space and get out of the haunted place.
I think it's a little bit sexist that you just assume it's a female here. Or no, it is Veronica.
Yeah.
I apologize. There is a name on there.
Yeah.
I thought, I'm like, how'd you know it was a female?
How dare you? I guessed, actually.
Well, you know what? You don't picture a male being that like worried about their kid's experience with the ghost, but yeah.
I mean,
yeah. And you know what? If I recall correctly, this is something though that goes state by state. So in some states, I believe you are required if somebody asks if this house is haunted. Maybe I went over this with Andrew Schultz, property manager, and he said that in New York, if the property is used at all to make money off of the haunting, you have to disclose that it's a haunted property.
Wait a minute, there's laws about haunted? No,
yes. Well, it makes sense a little bit more because then you're getting into kind of this other realm as far as like, all right, in Halloween, like there's going to be people like
you go visit an asylum or something.
Yeah, so if it's a converted asylum or something, maybe, and they're still making money off of it in some way, they have to disclose that.
Yeah, but legally, how would you ever prove that a house is haunted?
Well, I don't think they have to prove that it's haunted. They just have to say that they're making money off of it for paranormal activity.
Well, okay, all right, that makes sense. But other than that, a landlord, I can't imagine any state requiring a landlord disclose that the place is haunted because that's up to your own.
No, you just get one of those ghost hunter little video cameras that like, you get the frequencies that come off of it.
Right.
Yeah. I actually did one of those in Buffalo. They have a Central Terminal.
Yeah.
And they do ghost tours there. And I have an overactive imagination, so I didn't love it. But, you're going through this. It's just really, do you know when Central Terminal closed?
I want to say 30s or 40s.
Yeah, I'm not even sure.
Yeah.
But it's been closed for a long time, and it's not in the best neighborhood either at this point in Buffalo, and it's a pretty dilapidated building.
It's just kind of a spooky looking building that looks like it should be on like the cover of Ghostbusters or something.
Yeah, it's like if I think Grand Central in New York City, if it just was on crack and a little bit smaller, obviously. But we walked around and it was so cheesy because they're like, and in this room, this happened. And then what they would do is they would pass like iPhones and iPads around and they'd be like, here's a photo that somebody took right where you're standing. And I'd be like, well, that clearly looks like a ghost right there. Yeah. But I'm like, that's pretty easy to kind of Photoshop that. So I was still scared though.
Yeah. Again, it's, I don't want this podcast to turn into whether ghosts exist or not, but
I think it's a very relevant and real conversation to have.
I've had people die in my house. I don't believe in ghosts, and so I've never seen them. So does that make it that I just am not seeing them because I don't believe, or do they not truly exist?
It did kind of though, like when I bought my current house, so, it's one of those things where you're like, oh, who lived there before? And you want to know if they died there or not.
Yeah.
It does kind of change the way you feel about a house when you're, buying it.
Yes. If that's your reality, if that's what you're thinking, and that has some sort of effect on how you perceive that that house from that point on, I don't know. I am definitely not on the same page as the whole ghost thing. I'm just not.
All right. Well,
I'm not a.
Got to work on that imagination then.
And if I had a rental property that somebody left and thought that it was haunted, and I re-rented it, I for sure wouldn't mention to the new people that the other people thought that it was haunted. So I'm planting that seed, you know what I mean, of the future doubt or fear in them or whatever. So, I think the power of suggestion is powerful,
Yeah, so, absolutely.
And once she found out the house was 100 years old, of course, that proves that it's haunted. You know what I mean? Yeah, several people mentioned it's 100 years old. My house is 100 years old. Well, maybe not, but getting there. It's close. There's nothing we can do for you, ma'am, Monica. Sorry.
All right.
Move if you feel that it's truly haunted and your life's at risk or danger.
Yeah, but maybe they got a heck of a deal on it because it's haunted.
Maybe.
You never know.
Then again, there's also people who would pay a premium to know that they're renting from a place that's haunted.
Absolutely.
So,
I actually looked at a property down, and this was the craziest thing. Well, maybe not the craziest. I feel like that's a little bit of a hyperbole. But when I was first looking for a rental property, I wanted to get a duplex at least so I could live in one side and then rent out the other. And I looked at a house in around the Allentown area in Buffalo, New York. And the price on this house, though, was crazy. And I was like, why is it so expensive? And I went and looked at it anyways because it looked interesting.
Mhm.
But they said that Samuel Clemens used to write there.
Okay.
So you know Samuel Clemens, right?
Yeah, that was why Mark Twain,
Yes.
right? And that's why the house had a premium on it?
Yeah. So Mark Twain supposedly used to do writing in there. He didn't live there, but he had a friend that was there, and he would write some of his stories from this house. And I was like, wait a minute. You want me to spend an extra $75,000 not to buy Mark Twain's house, but to buy his friend's house where he sometimes visited and supposedly wrote some of his stories. And I was like, you know what? I think, you're selling me a story yourself.
If
so.
he wrote on the wall, maybe. Or, something like that.
Or he fell down the stairs and died there. Like that might be worth some money.
Maybe.
Be like his bones are like in the basement still. That would be worth some serious money.
Maybe. But wow.
I feel like we're really just, going on a tangent here.
But again, I think this kind of highlights some of the crazy stuff that landlords sometimes can deal with or have to deal with. And again, I feel for you. I genuinely do. I know that you guys, we're only scratching the surface of some of the things that you guys out there deal with every day.
Mm-hmm.
Or, probably isn't the first time that you've heard a story like this. I'm sure there's landlords out there listening right now that are saying, oh my God, had the same exact thing happen. So we get it. We feel for you. We know what it's like. I would say my best advice in a situation like this is try to be reasonable, choke back the, giggles if you feel like you're about to, or try to take it as serious as you can to at least respect that person's genuine fears. But if you're like me and don't believe any of it, then, you're going to have to convince them that the house is
Have you not
haunted.
seen the movie Ghost with Whoopi Goldberg?
Of course
It's an
I
American
did.
classic.
You did mention Patrick Swayze. I mean, Whoopi Goldberg was a co-star. It was starring Patrick Swayze, okay? Yeah, of course I've seen it.
All right. Well, I think on that note, this is a good time to wrap up episode 205.
Yeah. Catch you on the flip side.